The slam of the front door echoed through the small house, a sharp, definitive sound that sliced through the ordinary hum of a Tuesday morning. Samuel stood in the hallway, the faded floral wallpaper suddenly seeming to press in on him. In his hand, a hastily scribbled note. "I can't do this anymore. I need more than this. Don't try to find me." Laura was gone. The silence she left behind was a heavy blanket, smothering the usual joyful chaos of their 5 children. Ethan, his eldest at 10, appeared at the top of the stairs, his brow furrowed with a premature seriousness. "Dad, was that Mom?" Samuel swallowed, the words catching in his throat. "How did you tell your children their mother had just walked out on them?" Maya, a sensitive 8-year-old, peeked around her brother, her eyes wide. Downstairs, the 5-year-old twins, Leo and Finn, who had been bickering moments before over a toy truck, fell quiet, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. And in the living room, 2-year-old Sophie began to wail, a raw, instinctive cry that pierced Samuel's numbness. He forced himself to move, to go to Sophie, to scoop her into his arms. Her small body trembled against his, her tears soaking his shirt. Over her shoulder, he saw Ethan and Maya now halfway down the stairs, their faces pale. Leo and Finn had crept into the hallway, their earlier dispute forgotten. 5 pairs of eyes, ranging from bewildered to terrified, were fixed on him. Mom has had to go away for a while," Samuel managed, the words feeling like stones in his mouth. It was a pitifully inadequate explanation, but it was all he could offer in that moment of shattering reality. The days that followed were a blur of bewildered questions, tearful nights, and an aching void where Laura's presence used to be. The small routines they had, the shared tasks, now fell solely on Samuel. He was a mechanic at a local garage, a job that demanded long hours and physical labor. Now, it seemed an impossible mountain to climb alongside the full-time care of 5 children. His world, once bustling and full, now felt precariously balanced on the edge of an abyss. He saw the pity in the eyes of other parents at the school gate, the whispers from neighbors. 5 of them, poor man. How will he ever manage? He felt their doubt like a physical weight, adding to his own gnawing fear. Laura had been overwhelmed, and she was their mother. What chance did he have? He was just their dad, the one who usually handled the rough and tumble play, the bedtime stories, not the intricate daily dance of school lunches, doctor's appointments, and emotional navigation for 5 distinct, grieving personalities. One evening, after a particularly chaotic day involving a missed school bus, a science project emergency, and Sophie spiking a fever, Samuel found himself sitting alone at the kitchen table. The house was finally quiet, the children asleep. Exhaustion pulled at him, but a deeper ache resonated in his chest, the ache of failure, of inadequacy. He looked at Laura's empty chair, a stark symbol of her abandonment and his sudden, crushing responsibility. The silence in the room wasn't peaceful, it was accusing. He buried his face in his hands, the sheer scale of it all threatening to drown him. He wasn't just heartbroken, he was terrified. How could he be enough? How could he mend these 5 small, fractured hearts when his own felt like it was splintering? Then, a small sound. Ethan stood in the doorway, his small frame silhouetted against the dim hall light. He didn't say anything, just walked over and wrapped his arms around Samuel's neck from behind. A clumsy, childlike hug, yet it was an anchor. Maya appeared next, then Leo, then Finn, all crowding around him, their small hands patting his back, his shoulders. Sophie, disturbed by the movement, let out a sleepy cry from her crib in the next room. Lifting his head, Samuel looked at their faces, still marked by sleep and lingering sadness, but also by an unspoken trust. They were looking to him. In their eyes, he wasn't a failure. He was their dad, their constant. And in that moment, surrounded by his children, a different feeling began to push through the despair. It wasn't a grand revelation, no sudden surge of confidence. It was a quiet, fierce ember of resolve. He might be overwhelmed, he might be terrified, but he was all they had, and he would not let them down. The weight of silence was still there, but now, another weight settled alongside it, the profound, unyielding weight of a father's love. He would learn. He would adapt. He would endure. For them, the first few years after Laura left were a relentless storm. Samuel quickly realized his job at the garage, with its inflexible hours and demanding physicality, was unsustainable. The phone calls from school about a sick child, the need to be there for drop-offs and pick-ups, the sheer exhaustion of managing 5 young children alone. It was an impossible equation. With a heavy heart, he quit, taking a part-time cleaning job in the evenings at a local office building. The pay was a fraction of what he used to earn, but it meant he could be there for the children during the day. Their small savings dwindled alarmingly. Luxury became a distant memory, necessity became the mother of invention. Samuel learned to stretch every dollar, to mend clothes until they were more patch than fabric, to cook nutritious meals on a shoestring budget. He clipped coupons, frequented thrift stores, and became an expert at fixing broken toys, leaky faucets, and anything else that threatened their fragile financial stability. His hands, once calloused from wrenches and engine grease, now became adept at braiding Maya's hair, soothing Sophie's nightmares, and patiently guiding Ethan through homework. The days were a marathon, starting before dawn to get lunches packed and children ready, then school runs, errands, cleaning their small, increasingly cramped house, and snatching a few precious hours for his cleaning job when a kind neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, offered to watch the sleeping children. Sleep itself became a coveted, often interrupted commodity. He'd fall into bed long after midnight, only to be woken by a child's bad dream or Sophie's cough. His hidden skill, if one could call it that, was forged in this crucible of relentless demand. It wasn't a singular talent, but a combination of extraordinary resilience, unwavering patience, and a remarkable ability to organize chaos. He developed systems for everything: color, coded charts for chores, a meticulously planned weekly menu, a shared family calendar that became the backbone of their lives. He learned to listen, truly listen, to each child's worries, their triumphs, their unspoken needs. He became both mother and father, nurturer and provider, disciplinarian and confident. There were moments of sheer desperation, times when he felt like he was drowning. Once, all 5 children came down with the flu simultaneously. The small house became a cacophony of coughs, cries, and feverish demands. Samuel, running on fumes, barely slept for a week, tending to each child, his heart aching with their misery and his own helplessness. He remembered collapsing onto the sofa one afternoon, while they finally slept, thinking he couldn't go on. Then Leo, his face flushed with fever, had stumbled out, patted Samuel's cheek with a clammy hand, and whispered, "You're the best, Daddy." Those small affirmations were the lifelines that pulled him through. He started a small, almost accidental side hustle. To save money, He'd learned to repair their old appliances from online tutorials. Word got around the neighborhood. A single mother whose washing machine broke down, an elderly couple whose refrigerator gave up. Samuel, with his growing toolkit and quiet competence, became the go-to person for affordable repairs. He'd do it in the evenings after his cleaning job, or on weekends while the kids played nearby, often bartering for groceries or services rather than cash. It wasn't much, but it helped plug the gaps. It also gave him a sense of purpose beyond the daily grind, a flicker of the skilled mechanic he once was. The storm raged for years, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, Samuel learned to navigate its currents. He wasn't just weathering it anymore, he was charting a course, however unsteady. The children, too, adapted. Ethan took on responsibilities beyond his years, helping with his younger siblings. Maya became Samuel's little organizer, always knowing where things were. The twins, Leo and Finn, though still mischievous, developed a deep sense of loyalty to their father and each other. And Sophie, who had no memory of her mother, blossomed into a happy, affectionate child, her world revolving around her dad and siblings. They were a tight, knit unit, forged in adversity, bound by a love that had been tested and proven strong. The ghost of Laura's departure still lingered, but it no longer defined them. Their life was hard, yes, but it was also filled with a unique, hard-won joy. Nearly 7 years had passed since the front door slammed shut on Samuel's old life. 7 years of relentless effort, of learning and adapting, of shielding his children while quietly rebuilding their world from the ground up. The part-time cleaning job had long since been replaced. His small, informal repair service, born of necessity, had slowly, organically grown. He'd named it Second Chance Repairs, a name that resonated with him on multiple levels. He'd specialized, focusing on appliance repair first, then noticing a gap in the local market and fueled by a genuine interest in sustainability. He taught himself about solar panel installation and maintenance, and energy-efficient home solutions. He took online courses late at night, after the children were asleep, his old mechanic's aptitude for understanding complex systems finding a new outlet. His integrity and fair pricing earned him a loyal customer base. People trusted Samuel. They saw his dedication not just to his work, but to his family. The children were thriving, a testament to his unwavering commitment. Ethan, now a lanky 17-year-old, was a star on his school's debate team and applying to colleges. Maya, 15, was a talented artist, her sketches often depicting their close-knit family life. The twins, Leo and Finn, were 12, energetic and popular, both doing well in school and sports. Sophie, a bright 9-year-old, was a whirlwind of curiosity and laughter. Their home, though still modest, was filled with warmth, shared meals, and the comfortable rhythm of a family that had weathered storms together. Yet, going against the grain was a constant battle. Samuel often felt the sting of societal prejudice. At a parent-teacher conference for Sophie, a well-meaning but patronizing teacher had remarked, "It's wonderful how well she's doing, considering." The unspoken, considering she doesn't have a mother and her father is, well, just a repairman, hung heavy in the air. A former colleague from the garage, spotting Samuel installing solar panels on a roof, had called out, "Still tinkering, Sam? Thought you'd be back under a car bonnet by now." The condescension was clear. These moments were like paper cuts, small but irritating, reminding him that some people would always see him through the lens of his past or their own limited expectations. The Ally, who helped shift the trajectory of Second Chance Repairs, was Mrs. Albright, an elderly, astute businesswoman who owned several rental properties in town. She'd initially called Samuel for a simple dishwasher repair. Impressed by his meticulous work, his honest assessment, he'd told her it was a minor fix, not requiring the expensive replacement another company had quoted. And his quiet professionalism, she'd engaged him for more complex work, retrofitting her properties with energy-efficient systems. One afternoon, while he was explaining the benefits of a new solar water heater, she'd looked at him thoughtfully. "Samuel," she said, her gaze direct, "you have a good head on your shoulders, and your work ethic is impeccable. Have you ever thought about expanding, taking on bigger projects?" Samuel had been hesitant. Expansion meant loans, hiring staff, more risk, things he'd shied away from, content with providing a stable, if not prosperous, life for his children. "I have 5 kids, Mrs. Albright. My priority is keeping things steady for them." "And you are," she'd replied. "But steady doesn't mean stagnant. I know a good investment when I see one, in people as much as in property. I have a commercial building downtown that needs a complete green overhaul. I want you to bid for the contract. And if your numbers are sound, I'll not only give you the contract, but also help you secure the financing you need to scale up." It was a lifeline, a monumental opportunity. Mrs. Albright didn't just offer a project, she offered belief. She saw not a struggling single father or a small-time repairman, but a skilled professional with potential. That belief was a powerful antidote to the whispers of doubt he'd endured for so long. After discussing it with Ethan, who, with teenage wisdom, said, "Dad, you teach us to go for things. You should too," Samuel decided to take the leap. The seeds of success, carefully planted and painstakingly nurtured, were about to get a significant dose of sunshine. The decade mark was approaching. Mrs. Albright's belief in Samuel had been the catalyst he needed. Second Chance Repairs was no longer a one-man band operating out of a cluttered garage. It was now Sustainable Solutions by Samuel, a respected local business with a small office, a team of 3 skilled technicians, whom Samuel had trained himself, prioritizing attitude and willingness to learn over formal qualifications, and a growing portfolio of residential and commercial clients. He was known for his innovative approaches to energy efficiency, his fair dealings, and the quality of his installations. Their cramped rental house was a thing of the past. 2 years prior, Samuel had managed to secure a mortgage on a modest but spacious fixer-upper on the edge of town. It had a large yard where Sophie could play, a workshop for him, and enough bedrooms that no one had to share unless they wanted to. The fixing up had been a family affair. Ethan, before leaving for a scholarship at a state university to study environmental engineering, a path directly inspired by his father's work, had spent a summer helping Samuel with renovations. Maya, with her artistic eye, had chosen paint colors and designed the garden layout. Leo and Finn, now capable 15-year-olds, had become surprisingly handy with tools. Sophie appointed herself chief supervisor of morale, distributing water and encouragement. The house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was a testament to their journey, filled with laughter, memories, and the tangible results of their collective effort. It was the house that love and resilience had built. Samuel, now in his early 40s, looked older than his years. Lines of past stress etched around his eyes, but those eyes also held a deep, quiet satisfaction. He had not just survived, he had carved out a life of purpose and stability for his children. Ethan was thriving at university, calling every week with updates on his studies and projects. Maya, a talented 17-year-old, had won a prestigious local art scholarship and was planning to attend art school. Leo and Finn were both doing well in their sophomore year of high school, one leaning toward sports journalism, the other fascinated by coding. Sophie, now a clever 11-year-old, was a budding environmentalist, already lecturing the family on recycling protocols. They were good kids, kind, responsible, and deeply appreciative of their father. What Samuel didn't realize, as he planned a small celebration for Maya's scholarship, was that ripples of his quiet success had traveled further than he knew. Laura, his ex-wife, had been living a nomadic life several states away. Her dreams of more had soared into a string of unfulfilling jobs and transient relationships. She'd occasionally felt pangs of guilt, especially on the children's birthdays, but had always pushed them away, convinced she'd made the right decision for herself, and assuming Samuel and the children were likely struggling, reinforcing her narrative that she couldn't have coped. Recently, through a distant relative she'd reluctantly contacted, she'd heard a garbled account. Samuel was doing all right, had some sort of business, and the kids were all grown up now. The information was vague, but it planted a seed. Doing all right, she'd imagined him bitter, broken, remarried to someone plain and practical out of sheer necessity. The thought that he might actually be successful without her, it was a dissonance she couldn't quite reconcile. A mixture of curiosity, a twinge of something that might have been regret, and a strange, unacknowledged desire to see for herself began to brew within her. The unfolding vision of Samuel's life was one she had no part in, and, suddenly, she felt an urge to witness it. The knock on the door came on a Saturday morning, bright and crisp, the kind of autumn day that made the newly turned leaves in their yard glow like embers. Samuel was in the kitchen, laughing with Sophie as they attempted a new pancake recipe, a delightful, flour-dusted mess. Leo and Finn were out at soccer practice, and Maya was upstairs sketching. When Samuel opened the door, the spatula still in his hand, the laughter died in his throat. For a moment, his mind refused to process what his eyes were seeing. It was Laura. 10 years older, lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, her once vibrant hair now a more subdued shade, but it was unmistakably her. "Laura," he managed, his voice raspy with shock. "Hello, Samuel," she said, a nervous tremor in her voice. She clutched her handbag tightly, her eyes darting past him, trying to peer into the house. Can I come in?" Sophie, sensing the sudden tension, peeked around Samuel's legs. "Daddy, who is it?" Laura's gaze fell on Sophie, a child she had last seen as a toddler, now a bright-eyed girl on the cusp of adolescence. A flicker of something, confusion? Pain? Crossed Laura's face. Samuel was frozen for a beat, a whirlwind of old emotions, anger, hurt, bewilderment churning within him. But years of prioritizing his children's stability had taught him control. He stepped back. "Come in," he said, his tone carefully neutral. Laura walked into the hallway, her eyes taking in everything: the clean, polished wooden floors, the cheerful yellow paint on the walls, Maya's choice set, the framed photos of smiling children that lined the staircase. This wasn't the chaotic, struggling environment she had perhaps subconsciously braced herself to see. There was an order here, a warmth, a sense of settled peace that felt alien to her own turbulent life. "The house is nice," she commented, her voice a little too bright. "We like it," Samuel replied, closing the door. Sophie moved closer to him, slipping her hand into his. Maya, hearing unfamiliar voices, came to the top of the stairs. She paused, her eyes widening as she recognized the woman from old, faded photographs her father had never hidden but also never dwelled upon. Mom. The word was a breath uncertain and questioning. Laura turned, a strained smile on her face. "Maya, you're so grown up." The interaction was stilted, awkward. Samuel suggested they sit in the living room. As Laura perched on the edge of the comfortable sofa he and the boys had proudly bought from his business earnings, she couldn't help but notice the details. The shelves filled with books and school awards, Maya's artwork framed on the wall, a general air of comfortable, lived in prosperity. It was so different from the struggling, make-do existence she had left behind, and so different from what she had, perhaps, expected, or even, in some dark corner of her mind, hoped to find. What she didn't realize was that every well-tended plant, every neatly organized shelf, every smiling face in the photographs was a testament to a decade of Samuel's relentless love and effort. She tried to make small talk, asking about Ethan, about school. Samuel answered politely, his responses brief. Maya and Sophie remained mostly silent, watching her with an unnerving, assessing gaze that made Laura feel like an intruder. The echoes from her past were not just in her memory. They were in the very air of this house she didn't recognize, filled with a family she no longer knew. The carefully constructed narrative she'd told herself for 10 years, that she'd escaped a stifling, dead-end life, that they couldn't have managed without her anyway, was beginning to crumble under the weight of this quiet, unexpected reality. The full extent of Samuel's transformation, and theirs, was yet to be seen, but the initial tremors were already shaking her foundations. The polite but strained conversation in the living room was interrupted by the return of Leo and Finn, flushed and muddy from soccer. They skidded to a halt in the doorway, their boisterous energy dimming as they saw the stranger sitting with their father and sisters. "Boys," Samuel said, his voice calm. "This is Laura, your mother." Leo and Finn exchanged a quick, unreadable glance. They had no real memories of her, only stories, fragments of conversations, and the ever-present knowledge of her absence. "Oh," Leo said. Finn just nodded, his eyes curious but distant. The casual, almost indifferent greeting seemed to unnerve Laura more than outright hostility might have. I was hoping to see your business, Samuel," Laura said after a moment, perhaps looking for a change of subject, a way to understand the man he had become. "I heard you were doing something with repairs." The word sounded inadequate, even to her own ears. Samuel considered it. Part of him wanted to refuse, to shield what he had built from her gaze. But another part, a quieter, more confident part, knew there was nothing to hide. "All right," he said. "It's not far. We can walk." As they walked through the pleasant, tree-lined streets of their neighborhood towards the small commercial area where Sustainable Solutions by Samuel was located, Laura found herself struggling to reconcile the man walking beside her with the one she'd left. He was still Samuel, but there was a new quiet authority about him, a sense of self-possession she'd never seen before. When they arrived, Laura stopped. It wasn't a greasy workshop in a back alley. It was a smart, modern storefront with large windows displaying information about solar energy and water conservation. Inside, a bright, welcoming reception area led to organized offices and a pristine workshop bustling with quiet activity. Two young technicians in clean uniforms were working on complex-looking equipment, and a friendly receptionist greeted Samuel warmly. "This is impressive," Laura managed, genuinely taken aback. Samuel gave her a brief tour, explaining their work with a straightforward clarity. He showed her project blueprints for community buildings, testimonials from satisfied clients, the advanced diagnostic tools they used. He spoke of his team with pride, of their commitment to quality and sustainability. This wasn't just a job, it was a passion, a thriving enterprise built on competence and vision. The true revelation, however, came later that afternoon. Maya had an art exhibition at the local community center, displaying the work that had won her the scholarship. Samuel had insisted they all go, and somewhat reluctantly, Laura had tagged along, feeling increasingly like an observer of a life she had no claim to. The community center was abuzz. Maya, radiant and confident, stood by her collection of paintings and intricate sculptures. Many of them depicted family scenes, Samuel reading to a young Sophie, the 5 siblings laughing around a dinner table, a powerful portrait of Samuel himself, his face weathered, but his eyes full of kindness and strength, titled simply, or Anchor. As local dignitaries and art patrons praised Maya's talent, and as teachers and friends congratulated Samuel on his daughter's success, Laura watched from the periphery. She saw Ethan arrive, home for the weekend, a confident, articulate young man who embraced his father and sister warmly before politely acknowledging Laura. He spoke with enthusiasm about his environmental engineering studies, clearly inspired by Samuel's work. She saw Leo animatedly discussing sports with a local journalist who was covering the event, and Finn explaining a complex coding concept to an interested adult. Sophie, meanwhile, was confidently handing out small leaflets about Maya's art. It was in that moment, surrounded by the evidence of Samuel's quiet, extraordinary success not just in business, but in raising 5 capable, loving, and well-adjusted children that Laura was truly, profoundly stunned. This wasn't just survival, this was triumph. The man she had dismissed as not being enough had built a world of abundance, not necessarily of material wealth, but of love, respect, and achievement. He hadn't just coped, he had excelled. The narrative she had clung to for a decade, the one that painted her as the one who had escaped, shattered into a million pieces. The measure of the man she had abandoned was laid bare, and it was far greater than she had ever imagined. Her carefully constructed justifications for leaving felt hollow, insignificant in the face of this undeniable reality. The art exhibition wound down, and the family, along with a few close friends, prepared to head back to Samuel's house for a small celebration for Maya. Laura lingered, the vibrant energy of the event draining away, leaving her feeling hollow and out of place. Samuel approached her as the last of the guests departed. "Are you coming back to the house, Laura?" he asked, his tone polite, devoid of accusation but also lacking any particular warmth. She shook her head. "No, Samuel. I don't think I should." She finally looked him in the eye, a decade of unspoken things hanging between them. "What you've done, with the children, with your life, it's incredible. I truly had no idea. There was a rawness in her voice, a genuine, painful astonishment. I was wrong, she whispered, the admission costing her dearly but also sounding like a first step toward some kind of personal reckoning. I was so wrong. Samuel nodded slowly. There was no triumph in his expression. No, I told you so. Just a quiet acceptance of her words. We managed, he said simply. We found our way. I should go, Laura said, picking up her bag. I have a bus to catch. There were no pleas to stay, no attempts to reinsert herself into their lives. Perhaps she finally understood that this family unit, forged in the crucible of her absence, was complete without her. The door she had closed 10 years ago could not simply be reopened. Ethan and Maya came over. Ethan, ever the pragmatist, said, "It was interesting to meet you, Laura." Maya, more reserved, simply offered a small, non-committal nod. Leo, Finn and Sophie watched from a distance, their expressions unreadable, but clearly not inviting further interaction. The message was clear, unspoken, but palpable. She was a biological fact, a ghost from the past, but she was not part of their present, nor their future. Laura left, a solitary figure walking away from the warmth and light of the community center, stepping back into the life she had chosen. There were no tearful goodbyes, no dramatic reconciliations. Just a quiet, somber acknowledgement of a path irrevocably diverged. Back at Samuel's house, the atmosphere was lighter, filled with laughter and pride for Maya. As Samuel watched his children, Ethan discussing his latest engineering project, Maya glowing with her success, Leo and Finn debating a soccer match, Sophie excitedly recounting her day, a profound sense of peace settled over him. His vindication wasn't in Laura's stunned departure, but in the vibrant, happy lives of his children, in the solid, loving home they had built together. He had faced unimaginable hardship and emerged not bitter, but stronger, his life richer for the struggles they had overcome as a family. The legacy he was building was one of love, resilience, and the quiet dignity of a promise kept. The horizon ahead for Samuel and his children looked bright, a future forged not in spite of the past, but because of the strength they had found in navigating it together. He had done more than just raise 5 children. He had shown them how to build a life on foundations of integrity and unwavering love. And so, Samuel's journey from an abandoned father, facing overwhelming odds, to a respected business owner, and the proud patriarch of a thriving family serves as a powerful reminder that resilience can turn the deepest adversity into profound strength, and that true success is measured by the love we cultivate and the lives we nurture. If this story of perseverance and the quiet triumph of the human spirit stirred something in you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring narratives about people who turned adversity into triumph. What was the most impactful moment for you?